Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. We have a special guest today, Tim. It's good to see you again. Second Draft Professor podcast, I believe. How are you?
Doing well, man. How are you doing?
Doing all right. So you are the Matt LaFleur fan club treasurer?
Unofficially, informally, but yeah, he runs a tight ship, and I'm happy with how he's holding things down.
Yeah, so we have a lot of Packers fans in the chat. Matt LaFleur is the coach of the Packers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like connecting. I'm connecting things, right? Green Bay doesn't necessarily get a lot of national media attention, or he's under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
But cool. So a lot of Packers fans in the Draft Professor group chat. You and I are here to talk about linebackers. And you had a reasonably large list that I gave you to go through. So do you want to just maybe tell everybody, okay, how big was the list and how long did it take you to go through it?
The list, I think, was about 40 to 50 guys deep, somewhere in there. And it took me up until about 4 p.m. today when I sent you the list. You watch film and you take notes and you try to figure out, like, okay, how good is this guy? And then once you start getting to like guy number 20, you're like, all right, how am I going to sort these dudes into tiers? And then that starts informing how you watch everyone after. So then you go back and like try to figure out, all right, how am I going to categorize these dudes before? And so all the film and stuff, I was watching film, looking at stats, looking at guys' backgrounds up until 4 p.m. today when I sent you the list.
Cool. So I have the graphic. We can share it if we need to.
Yeah.
That's my opinion is that the podcast always looks better if it's people and not pictures. Yet for my day job, I always prefer talking to a picture, and I don't want anybody to ever see my face in camera at work. But different strokes for different times of day, I guess. Who are your favorite three linebackers in this class?
My favorites are obviously the top dog, Anthony Hill. Next guy is Wade Woodaz from Clemson. He he shifted over to linebacker from safety in the last year. And they have, it sounds like they're going to keep him at linebacker because his versatility at the position is really, really good. And my third favorite guy, not necessarily a sleeper, but not a dude who's hovering around the top of anyone's lists, is Xavier Sorey from Arkansas. A lot of people who watch his film really like him, but he just, for whatever reason, hasn't put it all together for a season. And it seems to be that there's some reporting about him that, he's just not one of those guys. But when you turn on the tape, I think, he's good in any phase of the run game. He's a good pass defender. He's got decent trigger and instincts. And I just don't think that there's a scheme that he really, that he doesn't perform strongly in. So I think he's a star linebacker, as is Wade Woodaz and Anthony Hill Jr.
Yeah. So when you sent me your graphic and like your compilation of the list, I would definitely say that Sorey was a name that I don't know that I've heard anybody else talking about that much. So that's Xavier Sorey Jr. from Arkansas. And you have him as okay. So when you list your heights, you're listing the percentile, correct?
Yeah. So I'm looking at the guys based on how they stack up against other linebackers in their position group. So dudes who are 6'3" in the linebacking class this year are going to be in the 89th percentile, which is where Xavier Sorey slots in.
Nice. And then you have him at 231 pounds. So this is I would say this is one of the larger linebackers of the class.
Yep.
Not the biggest, but he's going to be closer to the big than I'm assuming as we just get further down your list. We're going to probably cover some guys where is that a safety or is that a linebacker?
Right. There's a couple of dudes that fall into there. in particular around, like, sometimes guys play in a way that you wonder, like, are their arms really long? Or, do they play with good leverage? And, if they've got good arm length, then yeah, I want them at linebacker. But if the arms are a little bit short and they're kind of a tweener, then, safety is a little bit better because you can kind of just roll back in coverage.
Yeah. And then in your next, I'm going to call it like group of 5 or 6, I recognize, and actually I'm even going to go even further down. It looks like on your list, we just covered 3. And then I think you have a group of 9 where I've heard all of the names except 1. So the names are Taurine York from Texas A&M, Kyle Lewis from Pittsburgh, CJ Allen from Georgia, Deontay Lawson from Alabama, Sonny Styles from Ohio State, Raylan Wilson from Georgia, Whit Weeks from LSU, Amari Campbell from Penn State, Drake Bowen from Notre Dame. Those are all names that I've heard, but then I purposely skipped over a name from Kansas State, Austin Romaine. You have really high, and you have him at 245 pounds. Tell us about him.
Austin Romaine is a dude who I'm honestly not as high on as some other scouts, but I do just recently I've seen some breakdowns of him where people are really highlighting the similarities between him and Drake Bowen. And I just think that the size similarities between Bowen and Romaine are pretty strong. So if you're trying to get a visual in your head of how Austin Romaine plays and what he looks like, if you know what Drake Bowen looks like, you're getting a very similar dude, except I think of Drake Bowen as more of a run fitting guy. So just to kind of delineate in this group of 9, there's 2 different kinds of run defenders that I try to look at, and that's either run fitters or heat seekers. Run fitters being guys who just can stack up offensive linemen, can stack up tight ends, fit the run blocks, tighten up run lanes, and then make it easier for other linebackers, secondary players to come in and clean up tackles. That's Drake Bowen. Drake Bowen has an awesome trigger. That dude shuts down run lanes, and he can get off of blocks. He can stack and shed and make tackles. But the next level for Austin Romaine, I think, is he can do that, as well as if he is the guy who is tasked with just seeking out the running back, bringing a guy down, finding the quickest route to a tackle. I think he's got a little bit of an edge on Drake Bowen in that regard. But also that would be, I think, maybe a bit of a controversial opinion, because I think PFF has Drake Bowen as like the 3rd overall linebacker. And I don't necessarily disagree with their assessment of Drake as a player. I just see a little bit more versatility in Austin Romaine, at least through 24.
Okay, so I'm looking through your list. I don't see Gideon Lampron. So Ryan Sparks, that was not one of the 40 linebackers that we had identified early on in summer scouting. So we will get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, but Brian says that he's watching. Brian, if there's a small school guy, Brian's usually got him.
Small school guys are usually I usually catch those dudes later in the process. So this is for sure. That's for sure going to be something that I'm not going to catch right now from Bowling Green. We love Bowling Green, man.
Yep. So I have a question, basically from 18 higher on your list. So a couple of the other guys, I haven't dropped their names yet. Devin Deal from TCU, Cam Robinson from Virginia, Jeremiah Alexander from Clemson, Scooby Williams from Texas A&M. You have the word fit next to their name, and I'm assuming that that's your characteristic of that's a run-fitting linebacker?
Not necessarily. So I'm still trying to figure out how to describe these tiers. So everybody who I've described from Torian York on down to Scooby Williams, who you just mentioned, those guys are fits to me. I think those dudes, if they just do the same thing this year, if their draft stock doesn't increase at all, those dudes fit in the NFL. You draft those guys, there's a role for them where they fit on a team, whether they are, then you go to the next level, whether they are a coverage hawk, whether they are a run fitter, whether they are a heat seeking guy who can bring down tackles. So that's sort of where the delineation comes in there. So those dudes are not necessarily, I didn't want to say day one starters, but like if, at the very bottom of the list, if Scooby Williams gets picked up by the Eagles, let's say, and they've got a spot for him, he's going to look like one of the best young linebackers in football, because if he's just in there to bring down tackles around that big front seven, I mean, that guy's going to look like a rock star. So that was sort of how I delineated there, where like there's a spot on a roster if the team has a need that fits that skill set. Like he's got an NFL talent in the right scheme, I guess is the way to describe that.
So the adjective fit that I'm looking at is they fit in the NFL, not that they fit the run. Got it.
Yes. Yeah. The little parentheses RF, that's the run fitters. So those dudes are CJ Allen, Deontay Lawson, Raylan Wilson, Whit Weeks, Drake Bowen, who I think is probably like the meanest run fitter outside of Anthony Hill in this draft. I actually a little farther down the list, Jay Sean Barham is a pretty nasty run fitter. That's a big freaking dude. But yeah, those kinds of guys are more of the run fit guys who just their job, tighten up run lanes, be a little brutal.
Okay. So I'm going to skip it here. I'm going to skip the draft and develop guys and go down to take a flyer. So you have the word take a flyer by several linebackers. Ernest Hausman of Michigan, Aiden Fisher of Indiana, Landrick Barton of Utah, Prince Collie from Vanderbilt, Jaden Osbury from Notre Dame, Jake Golday from Cincinnati, Sean Murphy from South Carolina, Jamari Butler from LSU, Tyler Grubbs from Tulane, Stephen Dix Jr. from Arkansas, Bryce Botcher from Oregon, Michael Harris from Maryland. What do you mean by take a flyer?
Take a flyer for me is anywhere from like 5th round to undrafted free agent. This is a dude that isn't necessarily a can't miss prospect, but who I think probably has a place in the NFL. Based on year, may not have a place in the NFL next year. But if you've got the room, if you've got a need, and you're looking for a guy who has at least one usable NFL skill that you can develop into at least a rotational level player, that's take a flyer. And some of these dudes, I really, really love their play style, or either their play style or production, like Aiden Fisher at Indiana. I mean, that dude flies around. He just gets tackles. Prince Collie, I really, really love anybody who thumps the way he thumps and how he fits. Prince Collie was the only take a flyer guy besides Tony Rojas, who I even like gave a trait, because it was just so clear that Prince Collie is a run fitter. Like he's got a pretty good thump to his game. Everybody else, I am just sort of like, man, I can't quite, if I was asking, like, if I'm thinking about the Packers needing to draft a linebacker late in the draft, I don't necessarily see where these dudes fit. And, looking out at other rosters, it's like there's a place where they could develop once injuries happen, once free agency happens, or anything like that. But it's more just, these are dudes who could really be good, or they might just be a guy, or they may not be a guy, but it's just hard to slot, but it's impossible to write them off, because whether it's production or reputation or film, something is telling me like, just hang on to this guy.
Okay. So now I understand what take a flyer means. So I wanted to jump a tier, so I understood the gap between the top tier, which is, you said they fit in the NFL. Then you have a tier, which we've completely skipped. And then there's take a flyer tier. I got it now.
Yep.
Like, just trying to interpret the list. So do you want to go over your draft and develop? And at the top of your draft and develop is Harold Perkins. So is Harold Perkins a linebacker, an edge, or a nickel?
Man, I think that is up to whoever drafts and develops him. But I do think Perkins is so close to that fit category in like as far as just being able to be a run fitter in the NFL, I do think he's a front seven linebacker. He looks to have the length to be an edge, but he's also only 6'1", and so being 6'1" and not having necessarily top level athleticism, or at least it didn't seem that way to me in what I watched. It's just hard to imagine him really succeeding on the edge when he does have quite a gift for just fitting the run, disengaging from blocks to kind of just be pesky and run defense. I do think he is just an off-ball linebacker, and he's reliable. He's steady as a hammer. I think he could get more consistent, but I like him. That was the toughest one that I kind of wrestled with on, like, is this a guy who really fits in the NFL? And I'm like, no, I want to see him take not a huge step up, but just a little bit of a step up in 2025.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Ryan's question and I'm looking at the list. I don't see, did neither BYU linebacker make the initial watch list?
Neither one of those guys did. So I have not gone through any tape on the BYU guys yet.
Okay. Yeah, so apparently Ryan Sparks, Tim has gone through approximately 40 or 45 linebackers on a list that he was given for me, and the BYU linebackers were not on the list. Okay, so we talked about Harold Perkins. One of your draft and develop guys is CJ Hicks. Tell us about CJ Hicks.
CJ Hicks is a pretty versatile player. 6'3", 243 pounds is what he's listed at. And he looks to be a little bit lighter on film, but it may just be because he's playing against corn-fed dudes in the Big Ten. So maybe he just looks a little leaner. But he plays big and he plays versatile. He is a true hybrid linebacker edge. So I think, 8 or 9 years ago, when the NFL was really undergoing that sort of like tweener defensive scheme thing where there were a lot more star linebackers and stud linebackers and jack linebackers, when defenses were like, well, do we want to play a 3-4, a 4-3, a hybrid, a nickel? Like, what do we want to do? And now it's settled pretty firmly into like everybody's running nickel. Like, if you're not running nickel, you're not playing NFL football anymore. So because of that, I think he's still, I love the versatility on Hicks. As the game continues to change throughout his career, I think he's a great dude to have on your roster. And it makes it hard for me to project where he's going to be because he can rush the passer. He can pursue and trigger well. He can fit runs. And I really like CJ Hicks. I would just like to see more consistency out of those things because he can do a little bit of a disappearing act. And he's a senior, so this isn't his first. It's not his first review in front of draft guys yet, and no one's fallen in love with him quite yet. And that's usually like, I don't want to outsource all of my opinions, but when you're not anybody's favorite guy and you're as versatile as CJ Hicks is, I'm like, I need something to put you over the top for me.
Got it. Okay, so the next player you have is from this school that Ohio State dislikes, and that's Jayshon Barham from Michigan. Now, when we did a Michigan podcast earlier in the year, there's discussion that Barham moves to edge. So what's your assessment of Barham, linebacker or edge, and tell everybody a little bit about him?
I think he's a much better fit at edge. Not the most instinctive player, but you can't criticize his effort and you cannot criticize his strength. Like he is a powerful run defender. And he looks to be pretty long. He's listed at 6'3", 248. So if he can get up to 260, 270, you might even be able to squeeze him in at the occasional like 5 technique spot. So I like him more as a hand in the dirt down lineman. I don't see a place for him as an off-ball linebacker unless he plays for Dan Campbell. and Dan Campbell wants to make him a bruiser. But yeah.
Give me a minute. I was giving the chat what the list was, just in case they cared.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you have Harold Perkins higher than Suntarine Perkins on your list. How close are they to you in like how you evaluated them?
They're pretty close. So I didn't send this over to you, but I have a grading criteria that goes from 1 to 10. So I've got a 6.05 on Shad Banks, and I got a 6.57 on Harold Perkins. So they're just half a point apart. They're pretty close, and if you want to put a numerical value to it. But what I saw in Harold Perkins is just a more clear fit for how I can envision him being an off-ball linebacker in the NFL. And when I looked at Suntarine Perkins, 6'1", 210 pounds, one of the lightest dudes in this class, but eats up so much space with his quickness, and so much space with his ability to react. And I think that he could really, I would love to see him take a step up this year. I would love to see him become a really dominant player, because he's just got that, like, obviously you don't want to throw out any comparisons, but it's just, he plays the Micah Parsons position that now exists because Micah Parsons plays that position. And there was like, I can't remember the kid's name from Penn State who basically just did a Micah Parsons impression this year. And went super high. Abdul Carter. He's not the level of athlete of those guys, so I'm not putting him in that sentence at all. But that's the style of play. He wreaks havoc. He plays hard. He's very, very athletically gifted, just not in the height and weight categories. Plays stronger than his weight, and is just he's a really cool player who I think he's going to find himself onto an NFL roster for 10 years. It's just a matter of where he ends up there. The better comp might be Miles Jack. If Miles Jack played today, he probably would have more of that Micah Parsons style of play. But because he was coming into the league in 2015, he was a pure off-ball linebacker with insane athleticism. And the way that Suntarine Perkins can just pop offensive linemen who are 100 pounds heavier than him, it's very reminiscent of that Miles Jack game.
Okay. So Jake Golday was on the list, and we've covered him on the Take a Flyer, but that's one of the guys that Ryan Sparks likes. So you want to talk about Golday for a few minutes?
Phenomenal size. You just look at like 6'4", 240 pounds. He plays the linebacker position. He's not an edge. And he plays the linebacker position well. I think I just want to see some more production. But I just didn't see anything that necessarily wowed me a ton for projecting too far into his NFL career. I think he could be, because of his size and because of his ability just to read and react in the run game. He will make it onto an NFL roster. It's just sort of a matter of what happens when he gets there. And also, if you're looking at Cincinnati defenders, those dudes always just get a boost in my mind because they've produced so many solid pros, not necessarily Hall of Famers outside of the guys who recorded with Taylor Swift last night, but dudes, they just produce really, really solid pros every few years. And looking at Jake Golday's size in combination with a little bit of his film and that Cincinnati history, my only concern is he's got terrific size and he's a redshirt senior. So why haven't we seen the NFL leap yet? He's not undersized. He's certainly not at a small enough school where he could just disappear. Why are we not getting his name creeping up sooner? So
Ryan likes your Take a Flyer tier. So yeah. So let's give a little bit of background on the I'm going to call it the task. Okay.
Yeah.
So coming out of May, draft professors had an initial watch list at nearly every position. Well, let me rephrase it. We had a watch list at every position. Now, that watch list, it ebbs and flows. Players get added, and we'll discuss, within the draft professors as to, okay, I've watched him. And if you watch enough of our podcasts, like if we dive in and we're covering Texas and you realize, hey, there were like 7 additional names, they may have not been on an initial watch list, but somebody did watch them and say, I want them added to our master list.
Yep.
So in May, I sent the linebacker list to Tim and said, hey, Tim, and this is in May, how would you like to come on a podcast in August and podcast about all 40 of these linebackers? And then I said, tier the players any way that you want so that the discussion is organized. I did not give instructions on how to tier the players. Meaning, like, I don't want to, like, I'm already controlling a lot. I don't want to control everything, right?
Yeah.
So Tim had the freedom to create his own tiers. So he created the Take a Flyer tier. And there's going to be, Tim, you should just switch your handle to Take a Flyer. It doesn't need to be Matt LaFleur fan club. It needs to be Take a Flyer.
And I think Ryan's dead on. Like, I was trying to think about, like, because there's, when you get into organizing these guys and you play a position that is really, it's a very simple position. It's you got it or you don't for linebackers. I mean, you're looking, can they trigger on the run? Can they be serviceable enough in the pass? And can they find and bring down ball carriers when you need to? Once you're going on those 3 things, you're just like parsing out these dudes by degrees, and it could get disrespectful really quickly. And clearly, like, all these dudes are on a watch list. They're all amazing in their own right once you get to a certain level. So I'm like, how do I describe the, like, like Ryan said, the UDFAs and day 3 guys, and account for, like, also account for how teams are going to be thinking in them in April. So that was it. I, like, when I think about, like, there's dudes who I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't, like, last year, when I potted on here in March, I'm like, I, as a Packers fan, would never want to touch Andrew Makuba. There's no reason. We have Evan Williams. But when he got drafted to the Eagles, I was like, son of a gun. Like, my Eagles fan friends are going to be really annoying, because now Andrew Makuba doesn't have to make a single NFL tackle. He can just roam the field and disrupt players. So that, in Makuba, is I'd put him up a lot higher than a take the flyer guy. But I was like, how do I describe the level of play with the fit and it's like, we're doing football fan fiction here. So I'm just trying to organize it.
Well, right. And like, linebacker is as a position, there's probably 2 of them on the field for 75% of NFL plays.
Yeah.
Okay. But the number of times that 3 of them would be on the field would be not very much. Right. Yeah. But it also depends on, like, are you having to defend Derrick Henry 2 times a year? Right. Yeah. Like, the Bengals may use 3 linebackers more than Buffalo, simply because the Bengals have to play Derrick Henry twice a year. Yeah. Right. And I'm assuming Pittsburgh runs the ball a little bit. So maybe you need 3 linebackers to play Pittsburgh too. Right. Yeah. But on your roster, most NFL teams are going to carry 5 or 6 linebackers, even though only 2 play.
Mm-hmm.
And those linebackers are going to be special teams players. So if I were to look at your list and look at the fit, right, those fits are probably projecting to be a starter sometime year 2 or year 3.
Exactly.
Whereas the draft and develop, if they can beat Tyler Matakevich and give you 4 years in special teams and then you let him go, that's a good use of a draft pick. Even if it's 5th, 6th round, you're getting a special teams guy who may have to give you a spot start if a linebacker gets hurt, but you don't want to have to rely on him for a whole season.
Yeah.
Um,
And even
so
even what you're describing with that special teams fit, if I think a guy is purely like he can make a roster, maybe he has a special teams fit, that for me is more of a take a flyer guy. But the draft and develop is like, yeah, you have those qualities, so you can at least like stay employed. But then the next level is like Harold Perkins, CJ Hicks. I'm listing draft and develops guy. Deshaun McCullough, Deion Crawford. Love Deion Crawford. Those dudes, if they get with the right team and the right coach and they hold on to their job for 4 years, I think those dudes could be starters. So that's sort of like the small difference where I'm like, it realistically take a flyer, special teams, spot start, you're a pro. Draft and develop is like you could be a starter if health works out, fit works out, and all that. So that's sort of like that's also a little bit of difference in inside the tiers.
yeah, one of the other draft and develop players you have, he's actually at the very bottom of the list. We've covered him
Mm-hmm.
before when we did the Oklahoma podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Amasigo,
Yeah.
you have as a heat seeker, draft and develop, and I think
Yep.
as Owen paraphrased, I love a safety that is converted to linebacker. But tell everybody about the Oklahoma linebacker.
Oh man, I'm trying to Billy Bowman. I mean, like there's a lot of Samuel Omasigo's game that's just like, man, this guy is Billy Bowman with a few more pounds on his frame. And I loved Billy Bowman for what he was, which was just like a thumping safety who rolls down and can play coverage. Omasigo is just like, I don't necessarily trust him to take a lineman on one, stand him up and do all that. But if you've got a big, strong linebacker to pair him next to, or you've got a strong front seven that he can kind of like keep eyes in the backfield and work around, I really like Sam Omasigo. I think he could really, really thrive if he ends up in a place that's already got a nice developed defense. And even if he doesn't end up in a perfect spot, I just think the way he plays is sort of relentless. And so he's going to find his way onto a roster. I would be really curious to see how he interviews, how he goes through the draft process, because some dudes, I feel like you can really just tell their personality by the film. And Omasigo, the way he plays, seems like a good interview come March. Now, Ryan, I know you guys don't develop. Do you guys pay guys yet? Is that?
Oh, I love it. Keep going, Tim. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I did see. I saw Shamar Stewart had some highlights this past weekend though, and I'm like, I'm really glad I'm not in the AFC because I don't want to deal with that reluctantly.
So Ryan Sparks, so that you know, we do these watch lists for every position. So if you want to do one of these next year, where you get the Draft Professor watch list and then you add to it, we love it when people add to the watch list. And a lot of the Draft Professor content is we establish the watch list in May, and we're constantly refining it, from now all the way up through December. But yeah, so if you wanted to do this next year at one specific position group, let us know. So one of the guys that you have in the take a flyer list that other people say is a must watch, like some people said Bryce Botcher from Oregon at linebacker is a must watch, but he's pretty far down your list. So describe the player, and is there a reason that he is so far lower on your list?
There was nothing on tape that really jumped out to me, and kind of similar to I'm trying to think similar to Golday. He was just in that camp of those fifth year or graduate seniors who sort of just hanging around. I also do wonder, because he was drafted by the Astros last year. He's a baseball player. I do wonder, like, if, like, not a criticism of like what's his commitment to football, but it's just hard to make it to the NFL already. And the dudes who make it are dudes who generally are like, you you don't have another shot at anything else. Like, this is it. It's something that you've got to be such an astronomical talent to be able to do a few things. And I want to take a flyer on him because the athletic versatility to be a professional baseball player and a 6'2", 232-pound linebacker. He's one of the bigger dudes in this draft. He's obviously versatile athletically because he can play both those sports, and his production is good. He's got like 50 tackles a season. I just wonder how does this really translate, because nothing really jumped off the screen for me. And he looks fine in what was the Pac-12, but there was nothing that really popped out to me. And I just could see I could see other traits or other areas of potential for a lot of guys ahead of him. And he just wasn't one of those dudes that wowed me, but he was also one of the last guys that I watched. So I may not have gotten into enough of his tape.
Okay. So I remembered covering him as soon as you said baseball player. Now I remembered. So I think, correct any of this. From a football standpoint, he's going to grade high. The issue is, or the discussion around the player is he going to choose football? Now, My argument is, like, there's so many people, like Kyler Murray got drafted to play baseball too, right? Like, this happens, like getting drafted to play baseball. Okay, that means you're a good baseball player. But we shouldn't make it sound like you're drafted to play baseball, you're playing baseball. Like John Elway was drafted to play baseball too, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things is that speaks to the athlete he is. But really you just have to question is what sport is his love? Because I actually think a 4th round draft pick in the NFL has a better chance to make it than a 4th round draft pick in Major League Baseball.
For sure. Oh yeah. Maybe even a second, maybe even better than a second rounder, because when you're drafting in the NFL, when you're drafting in the NFL, 1, attrition is nuts. So draft picks are going to get a look. And then 2, there's just so many resources that are poured into the draft that once you're drafted, a team has to like exhaust everything before they decide they're done with you. And so I don't know if he gets drafted. And that was also sort of the thing. Like, if he's got to work his way onto a team, that's a really volatile and stressful process for anybody. Versus, going through the minors, which is like worse than being an unpaid intern at a Fortune 500 company. Like, playing in the minors, like, dude, it's rough.
Hey, Michael Jordan only lasted 18 months in the minors.
Yeah, and he was gambling to stay entertained. Like, it's like I think he's got a tough road to the pros no matter what angle he goes. But if you're playing Pac-12 baseball or whatever division, what is Oregon in now?
They're Big Ten.
They're Big Ten now. Okay. Like, if you're at that level and you're playing West Coast baseball, basically, like, you're a hell of a baseball player. And so that also kind of factors into, like, I don't know anything about baseball, but I would much rather take a Southern football player or somebody from the SEC or Big Ten or somebody, the old Big Ten, other than a West Coast player. So that bias is also probably creeping in there as well, that when I watch his tape, it just doesn't jump out in the same way. Cause maybe those dudes on the West Coast are playing in a lot of spacier offenses against spacier defenses. And so I might just not be seeing how a dude that big fits on a tighter field where, that's where NFL linebackers are playing. Everything isn't as spaced out. So, but yeah, no, he's a fun watch. And I mean, like, just a fun story. Like, when I first Googled him, I had to, like, it took a long time to really be like that. Yeah, that's the same dude. Like, that's the Houston Astros pitcher. I think he plays.
Okay. So why don't we pause here? Like I said, it's only your second podcast with us. So there's probably some people in the chat. Like, I mean, Ryan is here 2 or 3 times a week I see Ryan on a podcast, and Brian is here nearly every night.
Mhm.
Do you want to let everybody watching know who you are and what draft content you do and what other football stuff you do?
Yeah. So Tim Noonan, I'm born and raised in the heartland in Omaha. A Packers fan my whole life, and I have really grown to love the draft over the last 10 years. So I just write on the side for Cheesehead TV. Been doing that since 2016. And I mentioned Miles Jack earlier. That was the player that got me into the NFL draft 10 years ago, because I just watched him play and I was just completely blown away that this 6'2", probably 6'1", but listed at 6'2", 230-pound linebacker could stand up like dudes twice his size. And that at that point I was kind of hooked, and I just started digging further and further into the draft. And it has never been an avenue for like making money for me or anything. It's just it's a fun exercise. I love to do it every year. I love to see the storylines. And my career passion is working with college students. So seeing this side of it, where you're seeing young people develop and grow year by year and having, the insane emotional highs and lows of college and pro football, just ton of fun. So if you follow me on Twitter, that's the @. Everything else you could find me on. I've got a YouTube channel where I did some breakdowns last year of guys who are still in the league. I'm going to try to do some video breakdowns, but I am just picked up a new job, so I'm going to be busy learning that job. This will probably my space is going to be pretty quiet except for tweets about the draft for the next few months, but hope to be back to it around like December, January. Fantastic. Oh yeah, glad you love the zoo, man. I love so proud of the zoo. Glad that Omaha has that on the map.
Cool. Yeah, and again, like from my standpoint, the Draft Professor, we have that legendary group chat. I think at this point it's about 87 people deep. So part of doing the watch list is me reaching out to people that have podcasted with us once or twice and say, hey, here's a list of players that we're looking at. Is this the same list that you're looking at? And can you give us an idea as to what you think of the list? And, already Brian and Ryan are saying, well, you missed player A, player B, player C. Yep. And that's just the nature. I think at this time of the cycle is there's only a few people that have watched 200 or 300 players at this point, right?
Yeah.
So specifically for the linebacker class, my commercial is going to be for linebackers. So what we're going to do at Draft Professor is for the next 6 weeks, the content is going to be game previews. So Oregon, Penn State, who are the draftable players in the game? Iowa State, who are the draftable players in the game? So we'll introduce you to the draft class 2 teams at a time. That's going to be what you get in the next 6 weeks. Starting the second week of October, every podcast at the Draft Professor will be assigned a position. Linebacker has been assigned to 7 p.m. on Fridays. So that means that 7 p.m. Fridays, they're going to take 8 linebackers and they're going to start evaluating them. And then the next week, they're going to take 8 more. And then the next week, they're going to take 8 more. And we're going to go through about 32 linebackers. So we'll do 4 podcasts of 8 players each. Everybody that you have as a fit or higher is definitely going to be one of the 32. There's a lot of negotiation at that draft and develop and take a flyer level because we need to keep the list down to 32.
Yeah.
Right. We don't, I mean, it's going to be difficult to predict who a 6th or 7th round linebacker is right now. Right. Like if we have to start picking who those 32 players are, that's really difficult. Like I know Lander Barton will be one of them and you have him, halfway down your list. And I think there's a couple of Draft Professors that really like Amasigo and Aiden Fisher. Those guys immediately jump off, as well as like Suntarine Perkins and Harold Perkins. So I know those guys will make the list. So anyway, at Draft Professor, we have to decide which 32 linebackers make the cut that we're going to actually do a deep dive on them on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing. We have one of these lists for every position. So we've done, wide receiver podcast. We did a cornerback podcast, a safety podcast, etc. Just covering, here's all the players at the position. This is me tweaking who we're doing scouting reports on based upon some of the feedback. Like in this case, the feedback that you've given on linebackers will influence which of the 32 linebackers we choose to cover. So that being said, is there any other linebacker on the list that I have not given you the freedom to talk about that you want to share?
I'm just going to go in descending order because there's a few guys. We touched on his name, but I cannot tell you. I think more highly of Torian York, even though I've got guys who are rated above him in terms of just pure talent, ability, all that. Torian York's ability to find ball carriers and snuff out runs is bar none the best in this draft class. There's better athletes. There's bigger dudes. There are dudes who fit runs better, but there is nobody who shuts down ball carriers better than Torian York. That is a dude who could be a first-round draft pick if the fit is right. He is so close to a star. I just don't trust him as a run fitter necessarily, and I haven't gotten to see a ton of his pass coverage, but just based on his instincts in the run, I would guess he's pretty reliable in pass. Kyle Lewis is not carbon copy, but he's as versatile as Anthony Hill, but just more reliable in the run than anything. Not as reliable in the pass. Love Kyle Lewis. If you're getting Kyle Lewis in the draft, that's a stellar pickup. Braylon Wilson, I think, has all the tools to be a star linebacker. He just has to play better than CJ Allen, and he has to show his ability as a pass coverage guy. If Braylon Wilson shows his ability to show up in the pass, that is a dude who I would love to see end up in the first or second round. Like he is a fun watch, and he's just such a steady player. And if I was his agent, I would be like, dude, you just need to hang in there and continue to do the same things you've already done. Cam Robinson, someone mentioned it earlier. A lot of gifts in that guy. Looks long, has an awesome frame. I think if you pick up Cam Robinson, you've got an awesome run defender. Let's see what else we got here. Shad Banks, really like Shad Banks. Prince Will Uman-Milan, he's a transfer to Ole Miss. He was a Nebraska player, and definitely you watch the tape on him. He may not be the most stout football player, but he is probably the best athlete on any field he steps onto in college football. Just 6'5", 245, and moves like a ballerina. And then I will just close with my favorite non-big name guy who I think just plays the linebacker position in a teach tape sort of way. Devin Jackson from Oregon. I'm biased because he's from Omaha. He went to Burke High School, I believe. And I went to the feeder middle school to Burke. So when I saw his name, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I dug into the tape, and Devin Jackson, number 26 from Oregon, is a run fitter. He tightens up run lanes. He's a heat seeker. He can find and snuff out runs with the ball carrier. He's just at a pretty solid size, not the most ideal size. He could be a little bit bigger, but definitely not a slouch at 6'2", 230 pounds. I love Devin Jackson's game. So those are all the dudes. Those are the takes. That's about all I got there. And actually, no, I got one more take. I'm curious what people I don't see what people see in Lander Barton. Like, I see the size and I see the frame, but I don't see him winning run reps, and I don't see him winning pass rush reps. And so I have not seen in Lander Barton what other people have seen. So if anybody in the chat has Barton information for me, or like, you've got to see this game on Barton, I would love to see that.
There's probably a reason he went back to school. We covered him last year when we did scouting reports. And the consensus was your floor on Barton is a special teams ace.
Yep.
Right. And whether or not he can actually, I mean, you have him in the draft and develop category, right? Yeah. So he's somewhere between take a flyer and draft and develop. But it's at minimum, you're getting that fifth linebacker that that you can dress on Sundays because he's going to give you every special team snap.
He's also a first off the bus all-star. Like, you put that dude off the bus in a halfway decent suit, it's a good look.
Yep. So we are going to close down the podcast. So for Tim, myself, the 87 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on a podcast again tomorrow night where we discuss Dane Brugler's top wide receivers. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.